This is how freedom of speech ends. Not with a bang, but with a fucking Nazi pug. For those of you who haven't heard, all two of you living under that rock, there was a court case that was decided this week. It involved a person under the pseudonym of Count Dankula who was found guilty of trying to stir up Nazi hate against the Jewish community and will be sentenced for it next month. The sentencing for which can go up to a year. A year for the crime of making a joke. A joke that some people didn't like. That's it. Let me take you back for a moment. 2016 in April. Count Dankula, with a subscriber base in the double digits, makes a video called Mate Your Dug's a Nutsy, in which he says, and begins it by saying, that his girlfriend's dog is, she thinks her dog is the cutest wee thing ever. So he is going to try to piss her off by turning the dog into the least cute thing he can think of, which is a Nazi. The entire premise of the joke has been explained before the joke is even done. And the premise of the joke is he's going to turn good thing into bad thing. And he does that by training the dog to raise its little paw whenever Dankula says, Sieg Heil. That and to get its attention whenever he says, gas the Jews, or just Jews. That's it. That's the joke. Congratulations, you have full context. 2 weeks. That's all it took. 2 weeks, and the Scottish police came and arrested him. I'm not joking. They actually came to his house and dragged him out in handcuffs. They arrested a man, cuffed him for making a joke on the internet. Yep, this is the world we live in. During the entire insanity that was that trial, from the moment of his arrest to the moment of the verdict, was 23 months. For reference, the trials against the Nazi war criminals took about a year flat. Isn't that wild? He was found guilty of what? The exact crime, according to the court, was being grossly offensive. That's right! He could spend a year in jail for what is defined as being grossly offensive. You know how people like myself keep saying that calling someone an ist or saying they have an ism is a bad thing, and that this could irreprehensibly affect their life and get them in a situation where they will be in deep shit, or that we need freedom of speech because if speech was controlled like the way PC culture wants. We could get arrested for just saying the wrong thing at the wrong time, even if it was okay. And people tell me all the time, you're exaggerating, that's hyperbolic, that's insane, that would never happen. Yes, and as Dankula has shown, we've always been at war with East Asia. I don't know what further proof I need to get people to understand that this is insane and that freedom of speech is necessary in any civilized country in order to survive, because this is nigh on dictatorial. This, for reference and for context, there was actually a trial like this during World War II. In Finland, there was a dude that trained his dog, allegedly trained his dog, to raise its paw whenever the guy said Hitler. Of course, the German authorities got wind of this. It went all the way up to the German Chancellor. So there was a court hearing that lasted 2 months. 2 months for the actual Nazis to do a court case versus 2 years for a democratic nation to do a court case. That's some German efficiency right there. It took them 2 months because they could not find a sufficient amount of evidence or witnesses in order to prosecute the guy, so they dropped the case. Granted, they fucked with his business. They basically stopped all trade with his business, and I believe he went belly under, but I'm not sure on that. But regardless, the actual Nazis in 1941 did not convict someone of making fun of Hitler because they didn't have enough evidence. 1941, Nazis. We here in the 21st century, nearly 80 years later, have convicted someone in a democratically elected nation of making a joke against the Nazis. Let that sink in. In nearly 80 fucking years, we've gone backwards. When the internet heard about this, there was a lot of outrage. Because, well, several factors. The first is, this is incredibly stupid. Even the judge, in order to find a guilty verdict, explained how we all see it as stupid. I believe one of the parts was, it is not up to Dankula or anyone else to perceive context. It is the court's decision of how context matters in this. Yes, the court has legally removed context that was established in order to put in their own context so that they could find a way to be upset at it. I don't need to explain why that's bad, do I? They repeated the whole grossly offensive thing because apparently someone's feelings being hurt is bad. And at one point, the judge mentioned that this is unacceptable in a multicultural nation. Hang on a second there, Judge. You know, I had never thought that freedom of speech and immigration were exclusive to each other. And that's not something you want me to think about. Because if I have to choose one or the other, you aren't going to like my decision. They said that we took freedom of speech into consideration, but freedom of speech has its prices and its restrictions. So we took free speech into consideration by not taking free speech into consideration. Okay. They, in the entire trial, could find no one to be on the offended side of this. They had to bring in the head of the Scottish Jewish organization, whatever it's called, whose basic job it is to be offended on behalf of all Scottish Jews for anything. Because if he wasn't, there wouldn't be a need for this organization. He wouldn't have a job. They could find not a single person that was actually offended or upset by Dankula's joke. Hell, there was actually a theory that it was the police themselves that acted on behalf of anybody. Which, here's another part of that law that I talked about a moment ago, where being grossly offensive is actually a crime. According to that law, you do not need the person or group that a joke or a statement or an insult or whatever is directed at to be offended. If anybody else on their behalf is offended, then you can then be charged. You don't even need a victim to be charged with a crime. That's how fucking horribly this law is worded. Let that sink in. You could be charged with a crime for doing nothing and breaking no law. Which, by the way, that's also how hate crime laws in the UK work. You don't have to offend anybody, but if someone thinks, oh hey, you know, that might be offensive, your ass is grass. The prosecution of this trial basically made Dankula out to be some sort of Machiavellian villain. To which I respond, yes, that makes perfect sense. A guy that goes by the name of Count Dankula is some secret mastermind that is trying to convert everyone to Nazism by having his pug raise its paw. It's brilliant! I don't need to explain why that hurts my head, do I? As I said, even though this happened in Scotland, this is actually a UK-wide law, which I believe, because the UK is still in the EU, means that it might even be a EU-wide law. And what terrifies me the most, more than anything else, is that whatever happens in the EU tends to shift across the pond towards the US. And the US already has a very scarily large portion of the population that is against the First Amendment. Now, what differentiates the US from Europe is that the US actually has the First Amendment. The US has very specific freedom of speech laws in place to protect people. Europe kind of doesn't. They have kind of things in place, but they don't really have a set freedom of speech law, which they really need. They do. This is proof that they need it, because if they don't get it, then this kind of shit will be happening a lot more, which terrifies me. Orwell is rolling around in his grave so much right now that if they hooked up some wires to him, he could probably charge a city. George Washington actually popped up out of his grave and screamed, "This is why I revolted, you fuckers!" I cannot believe, I still cannot believe, after describing every little bit of this, that he was found guilty of anything. That a court had to intentionally remove context to find him guilty, and that they legally did it. That this was done just by a judge. There was no jury, there was no anything. It was just this judge. That's it. And this is now legal precedent. You've got to be kidding me. This is one of the most terrifying things to happen in my lifetime. This is how you take away people's freedoms and rights. What's almost as terrifying, though, is on the internet, this has seen a huge amount of pushback. Everywhere else, not so much. And that's what's really scary. We've seen a few comedians come out and say that they are against this, but it's more that they are defending the idea that this should be okay to be joked with, rather than saying that this was a sham of a trial. This seems to be incredibly partisan as far as politicians are concerned. Every left-leaning politician is okay with this. The majority of the right-leaning politicians are against it. How is freedom of speech a partisan issue? How have we devolved that far as a society? Explain this to me, please. I hope that Tankula appeals this. I hope that this gets sent up to a higher court of sanity, but just any higher court, and they throw it out for being so vague and so fucking stupid. I hope that this gets wiped away from the annals of history so that this can never be used as precedent for anything. Because if it is, we as a society are fucked. Unfortunately, I have this strange feeling that it won't be. Because as I don't understand how partisanship plays into this so much, or why this is even a partisan issue. But a lot of judges tend to lean left. And it seems that the people who lean left, or extremely left as it were, are very much in favor of this ruling as opposed to opposed to it. Which, again, scares the living crap out of me. I want the people on the left, or the far left, to understand something. Just because your party or your side makes a law doesn't mean that it is then exclusive to your side. The other side, if they get elected and come into power, can then use that same law to fuck with you. Trump, let me give you that example, has been using executive authority like nothing. Because during Obama's tenure, he allowed it to become so loose and so carefree that the president could use it for any fucking thing. Do you get the problem here? Just because your side does it and you like it when they do it, doesn't mean that the other side won't do it when they get in charge. There is no honor system of, oh, well, the Democrats did it, and the Democrats put it into power, so only they can use it. No takesies, backsies. There's nothing like that. Once something is destroyed, the other side can then use it too. Why is this such a hard concept to grasp? I am scared about the civil liberties of everyone, and the media going on about how they are actually in favor of this, and that, oh, free speech should have restrictions, what he did was horrible, and anyone defending him is a racist, sexist, Nazi, etc. is very scary. Well, first of all, I love the irony that the media, who are existing because free speech exists in the first place, are against free speech. That's cosmic levels of irony. But I am scared that it seems that the powers that be right now are in favor of this happening, and it's the people who, are everyday Joe Schmoes that are the ones that are terrified of this. Because that tells me we've elected the wrong fuckers and they need to go. I have been rambling and going on almost nonstop because this is a situation that scares me on a very big level. Because this could be the beginning of the end. I don't want it to be. I want to be proven to be hyperbolic and wrong in the situation. But I can see this getting much worse very fast because there is now legal precedent that they can use to do things. And that terrifies me. So I'm saying to the internet as a whole, we need to stop this. We need to fight back against this. We need to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Well, hopefully they can reverse the charge against Dankula. But if this ever happens again, we need to make sure it doesn't get anywhere near this far. We cannot say, oh, well, common sense will prevail and they'll throw this out because it's stupid, because apparently common sense ain't so common anymore. This has been Math Machine screaming that 1984 was not a fucking instruction manual! Peace out.